Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn,
your Teagasc Sustainability Advisors, and you're welcome to the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast number 33, bringing you the latest information, science and opinion to improve farm sustainability. With ever-increasing pressure on beef farmers, how can we produce a quality product as efficiently as possible to make beef farming more profitable while also making it more environmentally and socially sustainable?
Programme Manager of the Future Beef Programme, Martina Harrington from Teagasc, joins us to discuss just that. Martina, you're very welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and your journey to Programme Manager of the Future Beef?
I can, Deirdre, and I suppose it's when you're looking back, you realise how long you have actually been in Teagasc. I suppose I started in Teagasc in the early 2000s as a reps advisor in the Teagasc office in Enniscorthy. I worked there in the reps section for 10 to 12 years, and then I moved on to be a B&T dry stock advisor after Michael Fitzgerald. And I loved being an advisor in the Enniscorthy office. It was great. I had a great client list, really progressive farmers, very varied workload. But in 2018, an opportunity came up to interview as a beef specialist, and I went for the interview and I got it. And then as a part of that role now, I'm the new manager of the Future Beef Programme.
Martina, can you tell us a bit about the Future Beef Programme? What's it all about, or who's involved in it?
I can, Cathal, yeah. The Future Beef Programme is Teagasc's new suckler beef demonstration farm programme, which is a long introduction to it, but it's basically a replacement of the previous Better Farm programme, which Teagasc ran in conjunction with the Irish Farmers Journal. And I suppose, like all demonstration programmes, it's based on the principle of seeing is believing, or as scientists call it, peer learning. So it's a demonstration farm programme with 22 farms, commercial family farms placed right across the country, and 2 non-commercial farms, which is the Newford Farm in Athenry and the Keepack Farm in Callstown and County Meath. And I suppose the whole focus of the programme is to drive profitability and sustainability on Irish beef farms. And we're sponsored or funded by 10 meat processors like the previous Better Farm programme.
Just on the 22 farmers across the country, are you in every end of the country, Midlands, far side, all over the place, or where are you fixed?
No, Cathal, I'm supported by 2 other advisors, Aisling Malloy, who is covering 10 farms down in the southwest, and Gabriel Trayers, who covers farms up in the northwest. So the 3 of us work on the programme.
Oh, yeah. And I presume all those 22 farms, different soil types, different issues on different farms, and are they all similar type enterprises, or what are they kind of running on the farm?
Yeah, so I suppose when we were looking at the programme, we kind of based it on an operation transformation type style. That what we wanted was that we would have 22 diverse farms across the country, but each of the farms would represent their own area. So we went into an area and we asked the advisors, can we get a farm from this area that has, similar soil type, similar soil type, size, farm size and system. So basically if we were looking at these farms, and if you were a farm in the northwest and we introduced the technology, we say low emission slurry spreading or protected ureas, that a farmer down the road would be able to see that technology actually working on that farm. So that was the whole idea of picking these farms. But we also looked at the farmer, and we wanted farmers that were very enthusiastic about suckler beef farming, that were really aware, I suppose, of environmental issues, and that were really looking at, would be quite open to taking on new technologies on those farms, seeing how they worked, and then I suppose talking about how those technologies worked on those farms to their neighbours and to their friends, and across nationally, because we'll have national profiles for these farmers. So I suppose if you go back to talk about what type of farms are there, we're looking at farms ranging from 18 hectares up to a farm in the Midlands of 114 hectares. In range, we have 18 cows up to 87 suckler cows, and we have systems where lads are going as far as weanlings, yearlings, stores, finishing heifers, finishing steers, under 16-month bull systems. We have some farmers that are buying in dairy calves to increase their stocking rate. We have mixed farms, so where there's beef and sheep on the same farm, and we also have 2 organic farms within the programme, so it's quite diverse.
I see Angus Fahy measuring grass in Galway. So how are the farmers adapting to the new technologies? Are their advisors helping them? Are specialists helping them?
Yeah, so I suppose the way that it's formed is the 22 farmers and the two other farms form a group. So we'd have the advisors the advisors are calling to do those farms once a month. So they're helping them say start on pasture base, looking at weighing animals, looking at diets, looking at grassland management. And then we have a meeting every 2 weeks, started a couple of weeks ago, on grassland management. So they have a good lot of support from their program advisor and also from their local advisor. So if we're looking at Angus Fahy, Micheál Kelly is his local advisor. So he's very involved with Aisling in supporting him on his farm.
Brilliant. That's really good.
I suppose the big thing on beef farms in the last couple of years, Martina, is profitability and sustainability. What is the feeling amongst farmers there at the moment? How are they feeling about the whole thing?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and beef has always been a challenging enterprise from a profitability point of view. And I suppose now that the dairy side of the house has pulled so far away from the beef side as regards profitability, you can't help but look over the ditch and see what other lads are doing. But I suppose from our side of things, what we're saying to farmers is you really need to concentrate on your own farm and exactly what you're doing within your own farm to push on your own profitability. And that all goes back to looking at efficiencies. Like, so we be concentrating on like that every animal on every farm is performing. Like, so if you go back to like our mantra is with the suckler farmers is that it's a calf per cow per year and a 365-day calving interval. Like, so if that cow is not having a calf every year, she's no business being on your farm. As much as possible, we're pushing calving at 24 months of age so that you don't have cows going around that aren't producing a calf until they're 3 years of age. Then once you have that calf on the ground, that there's good milk in your cow to provide a good heavy weanling, and then that weanling in itself has very, very good genetics that it's able to grow on in its own lifetime, at over a kilo a day. And then the farmer themselves then have to give them every help from a grassland management point of view, from a silage point of view, from a health point of view, from housing. So all of that leads into having a more profitable farm if you don't have animals that are not performing on your farm. And then I suppose the good side of this, when we're talking all about sustainability and greenhouse gases and all the rest of it, is the more productive that your animals on your farm are, the less waste that you have. So you have a lesser of a carbon footprint, so all of these things, efficiencies on farm locally for farmers will drive down your carbon footprint as long as you implement all of those efficiencies. So from that side of things, it's good, like,
In terms of breeding and breeding efficiencies, not that many beef farmers nationally are using AI. You're probably encouraging this as part of the program.
Yeah, Deirdre, we are. I suppose it depends on what the farmers are doing. Like, some of them would be very big into breeding and would have very, very good stock bulls, but would have spent a long time breeding up their cows and their bulls and would know exactly what they're buying onto farms. Other farmers, then you might be looking at maybe they're looking at AI on them, and maybe it's so as they don't have to have a second bull for their young stock, like, so that they're able to go onto the catalogue, look at a really good bull with really low calving difficulty for heifers, very high reliability, and they're able to use that bull on their heifers, and then they don't need a second bull on their farm. But 100% AI is brilliant. It's access to really good genetics, but sometimes for farms, because we're looking at a labour shortage on these farms, most dry stock farmers are now working off farm, they don't have as much time. So we're looking this year at maybe synchronizing some cows and some heifers on farms that we can increase the use of AI, but it's a work in progress.
And we spoke to Tommy Heffern in there last year. You might know him as Tommy the Vet, or he's very present on social media, great guy. But he spoke a lot about having a health plan in place. And I know one of your pillars or one of your key objectives is looking at a comprehensive health plan with farmers. How's that going?
Yeah, it's hugely important, Cathal. Like, if we have a sick animal, it's not going to perform to its optimum. And for a lot of farms and vets, it's nearly fire brigade more so than sitting down and doing a plan at the beginning of the year. So we have sat down with all of the farmers and looked at what their current plan is. And if there's any deficiencies in that plan, we've helped them to correct it along with their vets. Like, so I suppose one of the things that came up recently at a meeting was vaccination is not the be all and the end all, and maybe it's something that's been pushed without looking at all of the other factors on farm. So what we'd be looking at is going in onto the farm, seeing what your vaccination policy is, what the dosing policy is on farm, and then looking at the sheds, so that's a huge other part in beef farming. What is your shed? What are the ventilation like in it? What's the space allowance for your animals within that shed? Because in some of these farms, like, your animals are spending 6 months of the year in a confined space. So that space needs to be adequate for the animal that's within it to make sure that it's performing at an optimum. And if you look at it, if you're looking at 0.1 of a kilo over 120-day winter, or even put it over a 200-day winter, that's 20 kilos. So all of these things feed into performance. And what we want from this program is, again, going back to it, that every animal is performing at its optimum throughout its lifetime.
Are these farmers getting sort of an intensive advisory service and an intensive specialist contact?
Yeah, so they'll have an advisor calling to their farm once a month, which would be 12 visits in the year. You're on the phone constantly with these farmers, so you'll be contacting them to see what are they doing this week, how their grass growth is going, have they measured their grass, so maybe some of the issues that came up at your farm visit, you'll be seeing how are they getting on with that, and you're always at the end of the phone for them. So I suppose, in contrast to what would be a general advisory service where maybe an advisor would have 200 clients, the advisors on this program have 10 clients, so it is a very intensive system, and you're also working with the local advisors to those farms. So it is quite intensive. And I suppose, when we're putting up these reports on these farmers, you have to kind of, I suppose, look at that to say, well, there is this intensive advisory service going in here, but it's working on this farm. So if and technology is working on Angus Fahey's or on Ken Gill's farm, or Sam Pierce, or whoever that it might be across the country, if this technology is working on that farm, it'll work on your farm in your own locality. And sometimes these things are a reminder, like if we talk about, somebody going in to dose for lungworm because their animals are coughing, it's a reminder to somebody else that they might need to do that. Or if farmers are vaccinating for, we'll say, a scour vaccine before cows go to calve down, there'll be a little bit of information on that, and that'll prompt somebody else maybe to do it. So a lot of these things may be reminders more so than anything to other farmers, but also a knowledge of what other farmers are doing on their own farm.
I'm from Roscommon myself, and I was actually watching another video that you'd put up, Martina, of a farmer on challenging enough terrain, putting out his slurry by less technology. And encouraging the neighbours and that to do it as well, which I thought was great. He was a bit of an influencer.
Yeah, I suppose if you are looking at it, that's probably what we are looking for these farmers to be within the program, are influencers, and it goes back to this thing, seeing is believing. If I can see something happening in my own region, and I can talk to a farmer, or I can see a farmer putting up to say that this is working on my farm and I'm able to manage this. And it goes back to, like, you or I or Cathal can stand up at a Teagasc board and we can give the science behind it, and that's very easy for us to do. But a farmer, very easy to turn around. It's all fine for you to say that you're not actually doing this on your farm, but through a program like the Future Beef program, all of these farmers are like, other farmers. They're commercial farmers, they need to make money off of this business, and they're adopting these technologies, and they're talking about how they're doing it. Maybe something might go wrong this year and they'll have to correct it next year. So you'll be able to even, I suppose, learn by their mistakes. But the whole idea is to see technologies working on commercial farms that you can adopt on your farm, and talk to these farmers about how it's working.
I think you've nailed it there. That peer-to-peer learning is the big thing. We see that every day, but it is a huge direct benefit for those 22 farmers to have advisors coming regularly. Even say for likes of now beef farmers, traditionally that graze management wouldn't have been as intensified on it. Now with this support that you're giving, they're getting much better at grazing management. And even in right now, for example, at the moment, the way grass is tricky at the minute, but I suppose going back to the demonstration, that's the 22 farms, but the success of this program is getting that message out across the whole spectrum. And I know you have regular updates coming out from each of the 22 farmers, and you're hoping to build that towards maybe monthly potentially. Can you tell me what one of those updates contain, maybe from one of the farmers?
I suppose, Cathal, from our own side of things, like the program has really got up and running since January, and we've done a huge amount of work within the program so far. And again, knowledge transfer is key. So it's the whole idea of getting these messages from what the farmers are doing through this intensive advice out to the general population of farmers so that they can see what's happening. So I suppose we have the website there, and all the 22 farms are on that website. And when we go out and we have a farm visit once a month, we'll do an update we'll say what's happening from a breeding point of view, what's happening from a health point of view, what's happening from grassland management. Like, so we could be talking about, we'll say, Olivia Hines in Roscommon, and saying, what's happening on her farm as regards where's her growth rate, where's her demand, what her days ahead are, where her grass wedge is, and what she's going to do to correct whatever, if there's something going wrong, or if things are exactly where they need to be, or she needs to put out fertilizer, or she needs to take out paddocks or whatever else. So we can talk through those. The same thing from a health side of things. So all of those, what's happening on those farms, or the advice that we're giving to those farms, is put up then through the website. And I suppose, Cathal, also we'll have the Teagasc dailies are going out there, so there'll be information on those. Today's Farm is another Teagasc publication that there's updates or profiles going out on these farms. There's some videos going out that Deirdre referenced, and there'll be stuff going out through social media. And these farms will also feature in Beef 2022 on the 5th of July in the Suckler Beef Village. So they'll be there for farmers to talk to.
I see Newford as well is concentrating a lot on biodiversity and putting in trees. Yeah. So from that perspective, what are adapting principles and that from Newford and from these demonstration farms and research centres? What technologies are these farmers taking on board from that point of view with biodiversity or planting trees or that on the farms?
Yeah, so I suppose, like, when we talk about the Future Beef program and being the next step to the Better Farm program, I suppose from the Better Farm program point of view, it was all about pushing output and profitability. And while the Future Beef program has a focus on output, profitability, the sustainability side comes into it, and that'll be the reducing the greenhouse gases. So that's like what we talked about before: low emission slurry spreading, protected urea, clover where it's suitable. I suppose from a biodiversity side of things, it'll be looking at your hedgerow management. How should you trim your hedges, when should you trim your hedges, if you're looking at maybe planting some level of trees on the farm, where you would plant them, where's the most beneficial side to plant them on. If you're looking at some of these reap margins, where do you plant those? And I suppose from a water quality point of view, and I suppose from your own program, the ASIP program, all of these farms have been visited by the ASIP program. So they've gone out onto the farms, they've inspected the farmyards, they've looked at the farm itself, water courses, drains, and they have given these farmers advice on what they should be doing and what they should not be doing. And some of these farmers have had to go and put in measures to reduce down their impact on water quality. So that'll be, as the program develops and as we move along, a lot of that information will also be coming out through the program and through the website and social media.
Yeah, I'm going to actually give one of your farmers a special mention. He's up on your monthly updates, James Skeen. I think he's up in Clare, is he? He actually has 3 monthly updates, and Deirdre, we have to give a special star to this man because he's 3 updates. Beef breeding 2022, he chats a bit about that in his updates. Grass management, but the third one is water quality. So, and I was delighted to see that because he actually identified an issue on his farm where a drain got blocked, and he identified that there was some sediment loss getting into the river causing an issue, and he's going out there trying to fix that issue, and he's pulling in an advisor on drainage and an ASIP advisor there to help him out. So that's very, very positive coming from the water quality side of the house, because we know it's a big issue going forward. So
absolutely. And there was an update there on Sam Pierce's, and it had a look at the maps that you're going out to farms with, like these PIP maps that was shown whether he was in a nitrate issue or whether he's in a nitrogen. I can't think of the word of it now. sensitive area, phosphorus sensitive area. It showed the overland flow on his farm, where the key areas might be that would cause a problem, so all of those maps, and they're available there for every farmer to have a look at, so when Sam had his Eamon Grace came and visited his farm, he found it really interesting, and he was able to go out and have a look at what he needed to address. And again, the same thing, he addressed the issues that Eamon brought up and was very happy to do that, so I think that's the big thing on these farms. A lot of lads are saying, well, what are farmers doing? And they're doing a huge amount in the background. It's just that it's not maybe publicized, and for some of them it's a little bit about information. If these farmers know exactly what they have to do, there's nobody better than a beef farmer to go ahead and do that.
The Future Beef Programme is doing great work, and I'm sure it'll go from strength to strength. And delighted to see that the 22 beef farmers are so engaged. Really enjoyed the chat today. Thanks a million for the time.
Thanks, Martina.
Thanks, Cathal. Thanks, Deirdre.
That's it for this episode of the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast. Thanks to Martina Harrington from Teagasc, Programme Manager of the Future Beef Programme, for joining us on the show.
Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Cathal Summers.
And I'm Deirdre Glenn.
Join us next time for the Teagasc Environment Edge podcast, signpost to farm sustainability.